Drivers behind the line.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of Behind the Lines, where we bring the experts to you. I'm Ruth Toomey from GameSense, hosting tonight with Adrienne Emerson, and this week we'll be discussing how to encourage gender equality in STEM. Tonight, we're going to have a roundtable discussion on the topic, followed by about 30 minutes of Q&A with you, the audience.
Before we hand it off to our experts, we do need to mention that the views expressed by Behind the Lines hosts and guests are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the views of first participants.
And viewers, don't forget that you can submit questions to us throughout the show about the topic by tweeting at FRCGameSense with hashtag FRCBTL, by emailing us at btl@frcgamesense.com, or by typing !Q into the Twitch stream chat, followed by your question.
With that, we're ready and excited to have two phenomenal experts with us today, and we'll let them introduce themselves. So, Adrienne, let's start with you first.
Hi, my name is Adrienne Rime, and I am the event manager for First Washington. I'm also a mentor for Bare Metal 2046. I've been involved with the team for the last 11 years since they first started.
Awesome. Andy, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Andy Baker, and this will be my 20th year as a mentor in First. I'm president of Andy Mark. I'm a mentor on Team 3940 Cybertooth. More importantly, I'm a husband and I'm a father of 3 young ladies. But you guys keep saying experts. I'm not an expert on this subject except for the fact that I'm a dad, I'm a mentor, and I'm a husband. So I'm going to come at you from those perspectives.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you both so much for joining us today. And this is an issue that's important to all of us. Whether we're actually a woman who's in First or participating in STEM, or if you're a father or a husband or a sibling of women in STEM. And something that we really see is there are a lot of young women doing the younger First programs, but visually you don't see that up the hill. And so let's jump in with talking a little bit about the demographics of First. I'm going to kick it over to Andy, who's given several presentations on that topic.
Well, I was fortunate enough to get some data from First this summer regarding the demographics of different minorities within the First programs. And one thing that's promising about how we're doing in First is we are ahead of industry. We have generally between 25 and 30% of women or females are on teams. While that's not enough, and I guess I want to state the case that we need more women in First. We need more ideas in First. We need more diverse ideas in First. It's one of Don Bosey's strategic pillars that he set out this summer of increasing diversity in First. But to the numbers, we're between 25% in First Tech Challenge and 34% in First Lego League Junior that make up the females on teams. While that's not enough, it also is a lot better than industry. The percentage of women in workforce back in 2011, those are the most recent numbers I have, is 13.2%. Now in computer technology fields, it's 26.6%. But my point is, First can do better, but at least we're leading the trend with regard to how we're compared to the engineering workforce.
Those are some pretty compelling numbers. We're working on getting a graphic up. We had some technical issues at the start of the show, So I think one of the numbers that we were looking at earlier is we're seeing, let me just grab it in front of me. We're looking at about 34%, 30 to 34% of young women participating in FLL and junior FLL. We see a bit of a drop off in first robotics competition and first tech challenge. We're seeing 27-25%. And we were discussing earlier that those numbers sound a bit higher than what we perceive at events. Do you guys have insights into that? Anything you want to talk about there?
Adrienne?
I don't really know why there's a drop off. One thing we were discussing earlier is, the drop off. We almost expected it to be higher. Sometimes a lot of the girls that you see on a team are behind the scenes. So when you look around, you actually see more boys. So we expected the numbers to be a little bit lower. I think that it needs to be one of our goals, not only to increase those numbers, but try and keep them more consistent so we don't see such a drop off. I don't know if it's because there's so many opportunities out there to do other activities, either STEM related or not STEM related. As students grow up, as we all know, when you're younger, you can try a lot more things. As you get older, you have to pick and choose. So I think one of the questions we need to answer is, why are some girls picking and choosing to do something other than robotics? And if we can answer that, maybe it will help us figure out what we can do to make this program more appealing and to lose fewer girls.
I think that's a great point, and I've spent some time talking with my fellow robotics coaches down at a middle school and an elementary school level, and they say the same things. We have so many girls involved in fifth grade, and not even just girls, but so many more kids involved down in the elementary schools and at the fifth grade. And once they start getting up into middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they really do. They have to pick and choose, and there's so many more activities for them to get involved in. And so there are reasons that I think we're seeing that drop off, and I think understanding the reasons why maybe more females aren't choosing robotics or STEM, activities once they have to choose is, I think, one of the biggest issues.
I think it might depend on the community too. I mean, Tahoma, our community, is pretty athletic. And granted, I will say the school and the district are extremely supportive of robotics in the FIRST programs. But as a parent, like Andy, I have 3 daughters. 2 of them are in college now. One is in 7th grade. And one thing that we battle is sports are year round for the most part. You do soccer, you do cheer, you do, football, softball, and anything. And there is a lot of pressure in my particular area for students to be athletic. And so how do we not only change the mindset of the kids, but of the parents? How do we get the parents to understand that doing something like this is as important as playing softball or as important as playing soccer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's definitely something that I think a lot of families and schools have to come by as well. You see a lot of funding. There are schools that won't hesitate to fully fund their football team, fully fund their basketball team. In the Midwest, basketball is huge. In the Northeast and in Texas, football is absolutely huge. And you don't see that same sort of funding, that same sort of school-wide acceptance of FIRST robotics teams that you would necessarily see for those athletic teams. And I think that is a contributing factor to why maybe joining a soccer or field hockey or basketball team is a little bit more appealing to young women than joining a robotics team, where it seems a little bit more ramshackle, put together depending on the school. I know in my high school, when my team started, we were working out of a physics classroom. It wasn't appealing. There weren't fancy uniforms. The coach was in it elbow deep just as much as we were. But it's an experience I never would have passed up. But you had to know it was there. You had to see past the non-flashy aspects of it.
Well, first is about a culture change, right? So
Right.
I think one thing that we need to celebrate is the fact that there are some segments within the U.S. and our community that there are investments being made in facilities that do support STEM. There's places that are building STEM centers and robotics centers, and they're putting in shops and they're doing those things just like an athletic department would put in a new weight room or a stadium or whatever. So I think it just takes time to do that. So I do think that incrementally we are changing the culture, and then getting women and more girls involved is also a factor of changing the culture and making it. I mean, okay, so we all know that if a kid gets on a robotics team, they sometimes can be ostracized or bullied and say, oh, that's for geeks or that's for nerds or whatever, and maybe that's a good home for them if they can handle the multitasking of being in sports and band and robotics, which is, I've seen it done, but it's tough. Or maybe more likely is it's a good home for a kid who's not excelling at those other things. He's not on the basketball team, or she's not swimming in the winter or whatever. So I think the more we promote our teams, the more we're going to change the culture and get access to the kids, in this case, the girls, to join these teams. But I guess a lot of those things are beyond our control. We can do what we can, but we can't go get the kids off these sports teams and drag them onto the robotics teams. We got to make it appealing to them, but it's going to take some time to get to that point.
Absolutely. So, I've heard a lot of people make comparisons between, they've never been to a robotics event before, and they step in and they're hit with a wall of sound and colors and lights, and they walk out of it saying, wow, that was like a sporting event. And it's being able to get that point across and help open that door, I think, and get people in is kind of a big thing. But you got to convince people to get their foot in the door. And what I've seen, sorry, on that point you have right there, getting the people into the door. As far as girls go, what I've seen and what my daughters have done is they get their friends. So most girls on teams, and I'm generalizing here, most girls on teams join because their friends who are probably mostly female have said, hey, this is cool. I like this. You're going to like it too. And then as strength in numbers, as they become more part of the team, they ask their friends. And then one year you might have 10% females, and then the next year you might have 25, 30%. And then before you know it, you're half and half girls and boys. And that's a great thing. Definitely.
And I think like you were saying, Andy, girls tend to do things in groups with their friends, but I also think girls are more comfortable joining something if they already see girls there. You're going to be more likely to get a single girl whose friends aren't interested at all, but she shows up and she says she sees that there's 10 girls on the team versus none, or sees 15 instead of 2, and then she says, okay, you know what, I can do this even though my friends aren't interested right now. And maybe by her joining, then her friends see the cool things she gets to do, and they start checking it out, and pretty soon you have more people.
Yep. I was doing a presentation on this subject at the Purdue First Forums 2 weeks ago, and Chris Foltz was presenting with me. And okay, so two white old guys giving a presentation on gender equality and FIRST. But coming from a guy, I'm passionate about this, and I realize that okay, I've got some biases and such, but so his point was on that topic. If you're doing the next time you do a demo, a robotics demo for your community, for a school or whatever, pay attention to what the kids on your team doing that demo are doing. And he said on his team for many years, he didn't realize it, but who was driving the robot? 2 boys. Who was carrying things around, getting the robot in and out of the van or on and off the truck, carrying things, lifting things, moving the totes around? Boys. Who was handing out the buttons and maybe setting up the presentation and maybe talking to the students the most. The girls were doing that. So the girls were doing more like marketing type stuff. The boys were doing the heavy lifting and the robot driving and such. And he said, once he realized that, he switched it. He had the girls drive, the girls unload the robot. The boys are handing out the buttons now and doing more of the presentation type stuff. And that might attract your customer or the new recruits in a different way. So if the girls who are maybe 8th graders, 7th graders see girls driving the robot, that says, wow, I can do that. So it's not just the percentages on your teams, but it's also where we encourage these kids to be a part of the team.
Yeah,
you know what? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've seen that too, just on my team. So in 2011, both of our pit bosses were girls. And those were kind of two of the first females we really had in leadership positions, at least in the couple years before that. And every single year since that year, we have had a female pit boss, a female driver, or both every single year. And I think that was just the catalyst that kind of pushed over the edge. So they see girls in that role, and all of a sudden, okay, yeah, I can do that. And that's a really powerful thing, I think.
And I might be starting to change the topic, but that is exactly one of the reasons my middle daughter, for her senior project, started Girls Gen here in Washington, and she was on the drive team. And my oldest daughter was one of the leads in the pits, which was kind of non-traditional. But she looked around and noticed that in general, she saw more boys behind the glass. She saw more boys working on the robots. And so what could we do to encourage girls to be in those positions? And so for her senior project, she started Girls Gen in Washington, and boys were welcome. Boys participated, but the girls were the leads. The girls were the ones driving the robot, carrying the robot, moving the robot, working on the robot, but they were supported by the boys. And so if the girls didn't have all the knowledge, because maybe they were used to being on the marketing team or working on the business plan or being part of the AV crew, well, they had the male mentors and the male students working side by side, but putting the girls in more of a leadership role. And I think that has increased the number of girls that you see driving robots in our area, because they, once they get the opportunity, they find that they like it. They find that they're good at it. They find that they can compete. A lot of them, they say, oh, well, I don't play as many video games, or well, they realize whether they do or not, it's really cool to be out there driving the robot. And so, once you get them back there, they really kind of blossom, and it builds their confidence.
That's fantastic. And Emerson, you were saying a little bit earlier that 148 just put together a STEM event. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we actually worked with the RAC Foundation on October 11th, which is the International Day of the Girl, and ourselves and about probably a couple hundred other girl-powered events were run that day. I'm actually wearing the shirt right now. So it was really interesting to me, because we've run robotics summer camps for the last few years. And I was really taken aback this year when I was sitting around. We run camps for 4th through 6th grade. So we had about 120 kids, and I counted 9 girls. And I was really disappointed. And I said, okay, this is not okay. I gotta fix this next year. So for this girl powered event, we had about 60 girls, and most of them were that same age range. And that was kind of the moment for me that I realized there's a place, I think, for these girl STEM events or these girl robotics events, because clearly they are more encouraged, or maybe their parents are more encouraged to sign them up to an event at that age that is for all females. And I think that was just really eye-opening to me. And it was a great day. We had a wonderful time. It was so much fun. We did a ton of activities, not just robotics, just STEM in general. And we got a great response. So I think we're going to continue to do things like that in the future.
That's fantastic. Go ahead, Andy. Did you have something to say?
Well, that's this subject has came up in at times I've talked about the subject of the specific subject of girls-based events. And on one hand, I believe that a first team that happens to be made up of all girls really shouldn't be called a girls' first team. They're not girls first. Initially, they're a first team, and I think these women need to be given the respect that they're a first team first, and that they happen to be all girls, because we don't call all boys teams all boys first teams. Like, it's a first team initially, and their school must be all boys, or their school must be all girls, or it's a Girl Scout group, or whatever it is. And I think to benefit them for their sense, I've experienced that these young ladies who are all on our girls teams need to be referenced as a first team initially, and that happens to be made up of all girls.
Right.
At the same time, I totally agree with Emerson with regard to giving opportunity to have all girls events, because sadly, not all girls are the strong women we see in first in leadership positions. I mean, I've known a lot of women and a lot of young ladies in first who are very confident, very strong, very outgoing, and they thrive in first. And you've seen many of them, and we've had many of them on our teams. But then again, the stereotype of a young lady on a first team isn't necessarily a strong, confident woman. It's a woman who might be a little bit more timid than a boy, who doesn't mind taking risks, and she stands back, and she doesn't jump in to fix something as quick as a guy does, or she doesn't jump in to lift a robot or drive the robot or those things. So I think for those types of girls, because there's all types of people, for those types of girls, these events that, like Adrienne spoke about with the REC Foundation's events, those types of events are great for young ladies who might be a little more timid than other gals, and they need those spaces to thrive in.
Absolutely. Talking a little bit about the all girls team, something that we learned about since our last episode, there's a school in northern Minnesota that actually has two first teams, and it's teams 3275 and 3134. And their mentors reached out to us, say, hey, we're really excited about this episode. We have two teams at our school. One is co-ed and the other is all girls. And it's a co-ed school, and it's not a very big school, from what I understand. But they, they give the kids the option. Do you want to be on this? Which team do you want to be on? They share mentorship, and they build independent robots. But, it kind of gives them a choice of the space that they want, which I thought was a really neat idea. But that sort of becomes a question of, can the school support that with the resources that they have?
Right.
I know that when my high school started a robotics team, Worcester got 10 grants that year, and one of those grants was for a citywide all-girls team. And I'm probably an outlier in this, but they gave me the choice of going to the all-girls team or going on the co-ed team. And I didn't want to, I found myself in a weird, strange position where I didn't want to go to that space, that completely sheltered off from everyone's space, which is what it felt like at the time.
Yeah.
I wanted to go toe-to-toe with the boys and, show what I had on my high school team. But
sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I also think we're doing a little bit of a disservice if we segregate the girls too much. I think we need to provide opportunities for them to try some things in maybe a safe space like Adrienne Emerson was talking about, and like Girls Gen, where they get the opportunity to step out of their comfort zone. But in the real world, you have to deal with boys. I mean, as an event manager, I'm directing events, and people need to listen to me and need to follow my direction, whether I'm female, male, no matter what I am. And so you have to find a balance, because if you segregate them and try and protect them too much, or try and give them too safe a space, you're ultimately keeping them from succeeding in the real world when they go off to college, when they get a job, when they, so maybe use that as a draw, maybe, and different areas are different. So people need to figure out what works for them, and that, having the choices might be really good. But one thing I get concerned about a little bit, we focus so much on bringing girls into STEM, and we need to. I mean, that's something I came from a family of all girls. I have all girls. I feel very strongly about. But we also need to look at just bringing more people into STEM and trying to find a way to recruit everybody who's interested, and be careful that we don't get, by being too concerned about protecting or, keeping girls safe, we're actually holding them down.
Yeah.
So
First is a great place for people to be treated equally. Really, it is. I mean, it's not a football team where obviously if you have speed and power and strength, you're going to excel, and those without it don't do as well. Or if you're in a choir or a band and you have a specific musical talent, you're going to shine more than others. Whereas, well, on a robotics team, I think no matter your gender, your race, your cultural background, I think we can make it a good place for this student or this adult to be a thriving member of the team. And I think there's roles for everybody who comes along. And I think I really do applaud FIRST for taking a stand on this issue of diversity this summer by putting out those strategic pillars of FIRST. And I think that I do agree with Adrienne regarding we don't want to protect the girls too much, because we got to get them into an environment where they do have to stand up for themselves. They do have to be in a situation which mimics their future job markets and such. So it's a touchy subject, and all kids, no matter if they're girls or boys, they develop in different ways, and there's different traits of these, in this case, girls, that some are strong and some are more timid. I'm kind of rambling here. Sorry. I do want to get to the point of how us guys, how a man and a boy, and how we should act with regard to encouraging and empowering women on our teams and young ladies on our teams. And so as we do things on our teams, don't make assumptions, and don't assume that this is a boy's job or that's a girl's job. I've noticed that girls, okay, I'm generalizing here, but boys tend to rush into things more, and they're more eager at doing things that they might not be good at, they might not be sure of themselves at, and they tend to be a little more fearless, where the girls kind of they're more careful, and they're more wise in their actions, and maybe a little bit more mature than the boys are, admittedly, and they take their time in taking these steps and not as eager to jump in on things. So specifically on FIRST teams, if there's things to do on the team that people don't want to do, like who wants to write the fundraising letter to get more sponsors? And what I've seen in my years on the FIRST teams is no one wants to do it. And the boys say, well, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go work on the robot. And who succumbs to the pressure to do these things? It's often the girls that do that. And I'm not sure why that is, but it's like they just kind of throw their hands up. It's like, okay, fine, I'll do it, and I'll get it done, and it'll be right. Whereas the guys tend to go off and do something else technical or something. And is that something that you folks see too? Do you see the same kind of thing happen?
I'm getting that all the time.
I also see like when we're discussing strategy or maybe design in the beginning, the boys are always, oh, wouldn't this be cool if, or why don't we? And it seems like the girls have to take in everything and soak it up and chew on it for a little while. And so if the conversation gets too far in one direction, you might have a girl who's got a great idea but doesn't say it because, well, they've already kind of started down this path, and trying to get them to understand that, especially when you're strategizing and trying to figure out what's going to drive your design, what what your ultimate goal is going to be when you're building your robot, trying to make sure that you give an opportunity for those girls to speak up and engage and say, I've been listening, because a lot of times girls will sit back and listen and they'll say, well, I've been listening to what everybody's saying, or, they chew on something and the boys are 5 steps ahead by the time they've processed it all. But I have found that you tend to have better, stronger, more competitive robots when you incorporate the ideas of the girls and the ideas of the boys. It seems like they do sometimes look at things slightly differently, and if you give them the opportunity to combine the two, you end up with a stronger robot.
And you get 50%. Actually, no, you get 100% more ideas. If you include,
yes, you do.
So selfishly, as a robot team mentor, I want as many ideas as I can get. I don't care who they come from. They can come from somebody's grandma on the team. I don't care. If she has a wonderful idea, bring it on. Let's figure out how to do that thing. But yeah, if we don't encourage these girls to be more active on the team and outspoken, then we're missing out. We're missing out on unique ideas. We're missing out on smart young ladies that might not be as reckless and as boisterous as the guys are, but they can be brilliant. So as a guy, I need to watch for those things. I need to stand up for maybe the timid students, not just the girls. I need to watch for areas where you see a guy and his man speaking over the girl, and he interrupts her and he cuts her off and that kind of stuff. I need to watch for that. I need to make sure I'm not just asking the boys to lift the robot and carry it in and out of the room or in and out of the truck. And I need to make sure I don't just assume, okay, this is something. How many times have you been in a room? There's 10 of you in there, and then maybe there's half women and half men, and somebody has to keep notes, right? Somebody has to keep notes. We're having a meeting. Well, who's going to keep notes? Well, obviously it's going to be a woman. Sally, you're going to keep notes? Well, why is that? Why don't the guys? Why isn't one of the guys keep notes? I mean, that happens a lot. Watch for that to happen on your team. I just saw it happen last night, and I said, Joseph, why don't you want to keep notes? We were going through the YPP stuff on the team I'm on. It's like, well, my handwriting's really sloppy. You guys wouldn't like my handwriting. So it'll be okay. We're not going to judge you. Why don't you keep notes? And so he finally did a little bit, but he was very resistant to doing that. The girls were kind of chuckling about it. But do that next time you have a room, and watch to see who keeps the notes, and they just kind of succumb to the pressure and say, fine. And it's usually the girl that says, I'll keep the notes. At least from my experience.
Another thing that we're doing out here in Washington is we started in 2014, and it's still kind of, because it's a grassroots effort, it's in their baby step, but we started the Girls First initiative, and we've had over all 4 of our programs, because we support all 4 of our programs through First Washington, but we've seen an 8% increase in girls since we have started it, and a lot of it, it doesn't have too much structure yet, but the idea behind it is getting the girls on the team, giving them a forum, giving them a place that they can sign up, and then working with them and getting ideas from them how to solve this problem, getting ideas from them how to not only increase their participation, but increase participation in general, or how to get more of them in some of these non-traditional roles on a team. And again, it's kind of in its infancy, and it's done in a grassroots way where we're just going out to the teams individually and trying to encourage the girls to become a part of this. But the data is showing it's helping, and so hopefully it'll continue.
That's definitely important.
So
go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, no. You go.
Okay, so I've seen various ladies' organizations within First pop up over the years. I remember when I first started back in, way back in 98, 99, 2000, I remember a couple young ladies I know, they were still involved with First. They started the Robot Chicks Union.
I
called
remember
RCU.
that.
RCU, yeah, and And it was Kristen Kelso and Jessica Boucher who started that. Hello, ladies. And now there's one out there that's called the First Ladies, and I'm on the website now. It's www.ladiesinfirst.com, and so check that out. I know some gals up in Minnesota. The Green Girls FTC team are part of that group, and there's been I think the Ponytail Posse is another FTC team that's involved with that. I hope I got that right. But there's different groups of gals that have been trying to promote women in first and ladies in first. And I think the more we give attention to this and the more we point our gals on our teams to these things, the better off they're going to be. So it looks like you can register and they have events and different things you can promote about that. So check out First Ladies or ladiesinfirst.com and you can get more about that. And then there's other things down here at the bottom of the page too. So check that out.
I think the more female mentors we have in some of the leadership roles, the engineering roles, a lot of the female mentors help with the chairmans or help on the business side or help with, but the more women, I know that First Washington's trying to diversify their executive board a little bit and show more female leaders in STEM, supporting First in the area and supporting teams in the area. And so I think that makes it more inviting. And
I think that I've been guilty of this many times as a first team leader. I see these parents come in, and I'll admit, I look at a dad come in, I think, oh man, maybe he'd be a good mentor. And I see the mom come in, I said, maybe she can make lunches on Saturdays.
Yeah. And you're not the only one.
And that's my bias, and I'm trying to get over that. So now, this year on our team, that we have a software student, our student software lead. I think he's a junior. I should know, but his mom's a pharmacist, right? And so, heck, that's a hugely STEM-based field that she's in, and she's been showing up more and more and more. And I'm encouraging her. Maybe she's kind of quiet, but I said, just soak this stuff up. Maybe you can help mentor our team, and maybe you can get away from your son. And there's these girls over here that really could look up to you, because pharmacy is a huge thing. So I think that's a great career. So, So for one, admit your biases. Two, look at all your resources and realize that moms can be your mentors too on these teams, and they could be good role models for your young ladies as a female technical role model in some cases.
Absolutely. So I think this is a good point to kind of bring it around into our Q&A portion of the show. I'd love to keep talking all night, but we have an hour. So let's kick it into this first question of the night, which ties in a little bit onto strong female influences as far as getting into robotics in the STEM fields. And this question comes from Azatoth in the Twitch chat. And their question is, there was recently an article that pointed towards masculinity of geek culture as a major factor in making females feel unwelcome in computer science fields. Do you agree with that perspective? Do you think fewer geeky pop culture references could make prospective female students feel more comfortable?
Wow.
It's a good question.
Okay, so I'm not a gamer, and I'm not really a computer science. I'm a gearhead, so I'm more of a mechanical type of guy. So but I've heard that within the gamer community, females kind of get bullied and ridiculed for not being one of the guys. So I know that's out there. And the geek culture, there's a very sexist segment to that geek culture, and I don't appreciate it. And for me, if I see that happen on people around me, they're people that I'm supposed to be leading. I'm gonna try to correct it right then. And if I see a student or a mentor do that, I'm not just gonna yell. I'm gonna pull them aside and say, "Hey, dude, what are you doing? That's kind of wrong. That's wrong. Why do you think this way? Are you trying to be cool or something?" But I would pull them aside. I would do it privately, try to get the kid corrected in some manner, and then maybe they'll learn from that. I don't always, I try to do this as much as I can. I try to correct in private and praise in public. So if I'm correcting a kid, I'm going to do that privately between them and I,
Right.
off to the side.
And, I happen
like
to be
that.
someone who is a gamer outside of First, and both, tabletop and miniature gaming, as well as computer gaming. And, I follow comics and the whole nerd package, so to speak. Something that we've been seeing as far as pop culture references are concerned, we're seeing a lot more women come forth, or women characters come forth in TV productions and movie productions. There was a huge following for Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy, and you started to see a lot of outcry, well, why aren't there Gamora toys? She was the green
Right.
assassin in Guardians of the Galaxy. There started to be a huge outcry there, and we're getting Wonder Woman the movie, and they just relaunched Supergirl as a TV series, and a little bit darker, definitely. Probably not for our high school students, but you're starting to see female characters like Jessica Jones on Netflix. And I believe there's a Miss Marvel movie coming out, and it's fantastic that we're starting to see, at least in geekdom as a whole, as well as the STEM fields, that we're starting to see this outcropping of female characters that young girls can relate to, and they say, look, there's a hero, there's somebody who went out and did what she had to do and did what she wanted to do. I can do that. So I think with a lot of that coming forward, it'll be good for the community. It's a matter of how those pop culture references are presented. Sorry. So let's look going to the next question, which is, when it comes to picking leads for a team, when, if at all, should gender come into play? Obviously, it would be nice to see females taking charge. And this person's team's executive board is 3/4 female, but when should it be prioritized?
I think on a team, it's important to have lots of leadership roles. I can speak for Bare Metal. They have an executive board. Those positions, they're elected positions, so the students have to get up and, give a speech as to why they think that they should be elected, and they're elected. But then what they do is they take a lot of the more senior students, and they go from being the students to the teachers. And so you have an electronics lead, or you have a fabrication lead, or you have, other leads that their job is to teach the newer students. And so I do think it's important to have a combination. Now, obviously, you wouldn't put anybody in a lead position where they're not going to be successful. You want them to be successful, but you can partner up and have co-leads, or you can certainly structure your team in a way that I would hope would help to promote both women and men as leads, and whether they're elected or appointed, make sure that they have the skills and that they all have the ability to lead in some way or another.
I don't think the gender should come into play at all when it comes to picking the team leads. I don't remember a time that's even been discussed on a team that I've been on. However, I think it's okay. No. However, sorry. It's our job to encourage all kids to become leaders, if that's what they choose to do. If they don't, then maybe they choose to work on a project on their own and not be a leading people, leading their peers, and that's fine. But at least it's our job as mentors to give them a chance to be a leader. And I agree, we should have many leadership positions. But yeah, I don't ever remember picking a leadership position based on gender. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, well, Okay, so this is a complicated answer for me, I think. So, well, in general, I agree with what Andy just said. I think this issue in particular of just encouraging girls to be in STEM is very important to me. And I think that the broader issue for me is all about diversity in general in STEM, in classrooms, but that's a whole nother topic for a different time. But I think a diverse group of people, whether it's an executive board, whether it's a first team, whether it's a classroom, I think is imperative for everyone to have a good experience. So while I don't think that when you're choosing things like these, gender should be a contributing factor, I think that choosing teams like this, you should always work to be choosing a diverse group of people, whatever that happens to mean at the time. And that could be diversity in gender, diversity in ethnicity, anything like that. But I think that gender definitely does play a role in that too. So while I don't think that you should ever choose just based on gender, I do think when you're choosing stuff like this, you should strive to have a diverse group of people.
I would hope if we're doing our jobs right as mentors, that would naturally occur. If you have a diverse group, both ethnicity and gender, and you only see white males in your leadership position, or white females, it doesn't matter. But if you only see one type in your leadership position, one group of people, then as mentors, we're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay.
And I think we need to look at that and say, okay, why are these people the only ones that feel that they can take on leadership roles? So if we're doing things properly, the diversity should occur as a result, I would hope.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely all good points. So let's send this into the next question. Let's see. And this one also comes from Aztaf. Any tips for empowering more timid students, female or otherwise, to take bigger roles in team group discussions?
Well, this greatly depends on the situation, on the student. Okay, any tips for empowering more? Okay, so one tip would be to, when you work as a team, let's say you have a big team. Maybe like last night, the team I'm on, we had 30 kids in our meeting. That was wonderful for us. We're not a huge team, but we had 30 kids at our meeting last night, and we broke up into subgroups. And I think if you have a big team, and if you discuss everything amongst those people on that big team, then the more timid students might be more apprehensive about speaking up in front of 30 people. Whereas if you break them up into subgroups, maybe 3 groups of 10 or 4 groups of 8 or whatever, breaking up into small groups gives them not as much pressure to speak in front of everybody. That's one of the things we do when we finally see the kickoff game, and then we break up into subgroups, and those groups brainstorm separately and come up with ideas separately, so that some of the more timid students come out of their shell because they're not as apprehensive, because they're not in front of 30 people. They're in front of 5 or 6 or 7. So breaking up into small groups is one thing. Another thing that you could do, I think, as a mentor, obviously you can encourage the kid to speak when they have a chance to do that. And I think one of the things that we don't do enough, I don't do enough of, is not only do I need to encourage that kid, but I need to look to my senior leadership and my team leadership and say, hey, you seniors, encourage Johnny over there. Make sure he's feeling welcome, that he can share his opinions. He might be a freshman or a soft-spoken kid or whatever, but if the other students encourage him along with me as a mentor, then they're going to maybe come out of their shell better. And not only am I coaching the kid, but I'm coaching my leaders to do the same thing. That might help.
I've worked with this a lot as well, and one of the things that I found sometimes works really well is you have a student that is timid, and you talk to them, and they want to work on it, and they want to get better at speaking or being a better leader. We'll talk about it beforehand, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to call on you during this meeting, or I'm going to pause and say, I want to know what you think about whatever topic. So it prepares them a little bit. And so they kind of, because sometimes if you just call on a kid just right off the bat, they get nervous, they don't know what to say. But if they know that it's coming, I think they can prepare a little bit better. And then as time goes on, you kind of, they can feel more comfortable in unprompted situations. But it's definitely a hard issue, not just in first teams, just in general. It was never a problem for me, but
You're kidding.
It's shocking, right?
No, I agree with you, Adrienne. I think that we need to get to know those kids and figure out the ones that we can push, or how to give them a safe place. Another thing that I know some teams do right after kickoff is they'll set up some Google Docs, and so when students go home afterwards or at night or in the morning, they have a group discussion via Google Doc, and there's a lot of students that will take the time to write something down because that's not as scary as standing up in a room full of students to talk about things. And so it's a way to generate some good ideas, but it's also a way to give some of those quiet students, because a lot of times the problem is speaking. They have these great ideas, but to speak in front of all those people to share it. So.
Yeah, I think Slack has changed that a lot for our team. I just throw that plug in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Slack is great. Google Docs is great. I know that on 319, we have a team Slack that's going all day. Like, I have to mute because it's just, there's so much good conversation happening in that Slack. And you see a lot of interaction with everybody on the team in the docs that we have in Google Docs, where they may not necessarily say something about it in a meeting, but they're more than happy to go in and contribute after they've had some time to sit back and think about it. And they're definitely a little bit more likely to speak out on something when they've had a chance to look at that doc before a meeting as well.
Also, I've noticed kids who are younger who tend to be timid. Sometimes just give them patience and to give them some time, and they'll come out of it. We had a kid last night who was talking about something in front of the whole entire team that it's probably the most I've ever heard the kid talk. And this is his second year on the team. Last year, he was one of those kids that didn't hardly say a word at all. He's like 6'6". He's a huge kid. He didn't ever talk last year. And this year, he's up there now. He's speaking in front of the entire team. So sometimes it just takes some time. It just takes some maturity and time, and they're getting more confidence with themselves. So sometimes you can encourage them and push them, and sometimes you just got to slowly be patient with them as they come out of their shell.
Absolutely. So let's kick it over to the next question. And this is something that we touched a little bit upon earlier. How do I get female mentors? How important are they to the effort?
I think female mentors are extremely important to the effort. I don't necessarily know the answer of how to get them. I think trying to look into your community and try, there's Society of Women Engineers. And so if you can link up with Society of Women Engineers or any other group like that in your community and reach out to them and in my position as the event manager, I would try and hook them in by getting them to show up to some of these events and seeing what these students do. And the hope would be is they would maybe make a connection with a team in their area and choose to start working with a team. But, I think, and I have always intended to do this, but never followed through when I was coaching, is survey your parents. I know that Team Rush, they have their students fill out an application, and part of the application process is learning what the parents do. And the whole reason behind that, I'm assuming, or one of the reasons behind that is then all of a sudden you have this pool of people that you don't know, and you can look at what they do and you can reach out to them individually. And that could be a phenomenal way. I'm sure that all of our students, if you start looking at their parents, there's probably a lot of strong females that are in STEM fields or other fields where they're leaders, but we just don't know they exist.
Yeah, listen, I can't say enough, I think, how important this issue is. And I'm a math major. I was a math major. So numbers to me mean everything. So I look around my school, and I'm in the middle of a STEM center now, literally. I mean, I have STEM programs. We have tons in our school. It's great. But I look at them, and I'm the team leader of our FRC team. We have 50% girls. So amazing.
Awesome.
So I look at our Destination Imagination program, and those who aren't familiar, it's another STEM program that is around the country, and we have a female teacher lead for that program, 50% girls. And then I look at our other STEM programs. Even in our VEX robotics program, I have a male teacher. I have 10% girls. We have a solar car program. He's a male teacher. He has like 5% girls. And then you look down in the elementary schools, and it's the same way. We only have one female coach down there, and our numbers with female students in those grades is lower than it is in our activities where we have female leads. So numbers don't lie to me. It is important. It's extremely important. And so, but I struggle with the same thing that Adrienne was just talking about as well. How do we get them? Man, if I solve that problem, I mean, we wouldn't be having this discussion right here. That's for sure. I don't know. But making contact with organizations is important. And I think just getting mentors in general is difficult. But it's all about community connections. Getting out there, seeing what's in your community, seeing who's there, and just figuring out, where you can fill gaps. But yeah, I wish I had all the answers. But I know it's important.
I think there's less female mentors in FIRST than there are female students in FIRST. I think the number is closer to 20% than it is 25-30% with regard to students, and it's not high enough. And I totally agree with Emerson. It's numbers don't lie, and I guess we have to do a better job of specifically recruiting females to be mentors, because we're not doing a good enough job as it is now as a community. But then again, I know females, I know women in engineering, and I know women who I used to work with at big automotive companies and such, and they get pulled in many, many directions. They get pulled in many directions to be the female on these committees, or to do all these different outreach things that females get asked to do, because they're in the vast minority of being only what's the number say 14% in engineering. So it's a catch-22. We have to get the industry to have more females in order to get more female mentors into our programs, which attract more females into our programs. So I don't have a really good answer. I think like Ruth said with regard to Teen 27, let's look at the parents. Let's not assume a mom is going to be serving us lunch on Saturday. Let's look at the parents and see if that mom can be a mentor and has some STEM backgrounds or STEM profession that could help us out. So this is a tough nut to crack. It's not going to be solved overnight. I think we're building the foundation within FIRST that's going to help. I think is going to help solve this in later years, which means that now that FIRST is 25, 26 years old, we can start asking the female alumni, just like to the people on this call, the female alumni to be mentors on these teams. So I know it's kind of a big weight on your shoulders, but it's partly up to you gals to do that kind of thing, to come back just like you two have, and to be mentors and be involved with the FIRST community.
Well, and one more thing, Andy, and I think you and I specifically need to think about this, because we both run districts in FRC. Yeah. We need to look at our female volunteers. And I don't mean our female volunteers that are lead queuers or that are scorekeepers. I mean our lead robot inspectors. I mean our FTAs. I mean our CSAs. Mm-hmm. Because not only is it getting female mentors on the team, but if these young ladies are seeing, a female field supervisor, a female FTA, females in lead roles on our field, it makes an impression on them. Great so point. I think that's something that we need to strive to do too, is diversify our volunteer base as well as our students and our mentor base.
And then highlight those mentors. We've got, actually in Indiana, we have two really strong FTA females. Allison Phelps down in Indy, and Liz Smith, who I'm very fortunate to have work at Andy Mark, and Liz Smith does FTAing all over the place, and she's a mentor to many young ladies. So yeah, Adrienne, that's a good point. I think not only we encourage the gals to be a mentor in those key roles at these events, but also highlight the women who do a good job. Like you guys have, you're in the Pacific Northwest, you're lead robot inspector for your entire district
Yep.
is a young lady.
Yep, Alita, and she's fabulous.
Alita runs a tight ship. She does a great job.
We're actually trying to get her to look at FTA as well. She was kind of the FTA for Girls Gen, shadowed by both her husband and John, one of our other FTAs. And she's seriously considering shifting over to the more technical side as well.
And she's I think she's an alumni of 360, right? Is that right?
She is. Yes, okay. She is.
And out in New England, for female volunteers in lead technical roles, we have Abby Perry, who's one of our head reps. We have Kate Pilot does at least one event in New England, usually Pine Tree. And this year we were very fortunate to have Amanda Bissett, who actually works for First, but is also an alumna of Rosie Team 839 and is now mentoring on 238. She ended up serving in a very technical role at many of these events across New England. And I think it was really inspiring for a lot of young girls to see all those women, and that's just a fraction of them in those positions. So let's bring this around to our last question. We're running a little bit close on time here. And this last question is, how do I approach this topic with the young men on my team?
That's a good question.
Okay, so I think what defines a man, or defines a young man, or a young gentleman is how they treat women. There's other things that define us too, but I think if we treat each other with respect, if we treat all people with respect, that shows what kind of character you have. I think if you bully people, or if you make prejudices against people, be it men or women, then it shows the character that you have. So I think young men, if they want to become a mature man, they learn how to treat each other with respect, and in this case of women, they treat a young lady with respect too. So, and I think on the first team, that means not trying to do things for them. Oh, let me machine that for you. I mean, there's one part about opening a door for somebody and being chivalrous, but I would open a door for a buddy of mine, be it a man or a woman. So think about the things that you do. Oh, let me do that for you. These girls on these robotics teams, they don't need you to do things for them. I remember my daughters coming home. We were sitting at this table talking about, well, how was your day today, and how was your day here at the robotics? How was robotics team meeting? And they said, well, this is. Two of them were on the team. This is their second year on the team. And one of the boys, they said, well, one of the boys, who's a new kid on the team this year, he wanted to show me how to run the mill. And first of all, he doesn't know how to run it. Secondly, I already know how to run the mill. So I didn't need him to show me how to do those things. So while he's maybe he's trying to be nice, maybe he's trying to be chivalrous, but you can't make that assumption that these gals need you to take care of these things for them, because in most cases they don't. And if they do, you need to not be, I guess as a young man, you need to show them respect and not just assume that you know more than they do about these technical things. I can go on about that for a long time, but this is a subject I'm pretty passionate about. So thanks for listening.
Adrienne and Adrienne, did you guys have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think that a lot of it is just about teaching everybody to just treat each other respectfully and equally, which is kind of mimicking, or a lot of what Andy is saying. And yes, we're focusing on girls because in this particular situation, we're trying to get more girls to increase our gender equality. But the bottom line is, you need to take a look at the situation and be respectful, whether it's an adult, whether it's a student, whether it's a male or whether it's a female. And if you wouldn't take a job away from your friend who's, a guy, you shouldn't take it away from a girl. And frankly, if I had boys on the team ask me that, that's kind of what I would tell them, is just, we want everybody to be inclusive. And what we're noticing is that we have fewer girls, and we want to change that. And so we're asking you to support us because we want to be a better and stronger team. And one of the ways that we want to do that is by increasing our diversity all the way around.
Yeah, and I think that just instead of asking the question of how should I bring it up, it's bring it up. I think us talking about this here is great, but the real change is going to happen if you have the conversations in your own shop, in your own team. I think just bringing light to the issue if something is happening is a lot of the battle.
Okay, so First is coming out with this. They have this new YPP training, right, for all the first teams and all the FRC teams this year, especially, are going through it right now. So to go through, the students are supposed to go through YPP training, and our lead teacher, Craig Williams on Cybertooth, ran this last night, and I was kind of like, oh, here we go. This is stuff that is gonna be boring, but it was great. Kids were talking about diversity issues, sexual abuse issues, travel issues between each other, and telling each other what they should and shouldn't do. It was wonderful stuff. And so you first teams out there, embrace this YPP stuff that First is putting out. It takes one night, one meeting to get it done. You watch a video, you break it into small groups, and the kids do the work, and some magic happens. It's pretty impressive. So hats off to First for pushing this thing.
Fantastic. And we'll see if we can include a link to that when we post this presentation in the First Robotics Competition Resource Library. And we're going to wrap it up at this point. I want to, thank you so much, Adrienne and Andy, for joining Adrienne and I tonight on Behind the Lines. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Thank you for your fabulous questions. And, remember to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, so that way you know when our next episodes are coming up. And in 2 weeks at 8 o'clock Eastern, join us again on Twitch and YouTube when we're going to discuss developing drivetrains. Thanks again as well to Stephanie, who is running the show from behind the scenes, and have a great night.